you have still not faced the impossibility of agnosticism when it comes to meaning and purpose in life, the value of a human life, ethics, and life after death. And you intentionally evade it. And I don't blame you, Alex. I'd do the same thing if I was sitting in your chair. That's baloney. That's not an appeal to agnosticism.
I need to jump in here. I need to jump in here. Listen, I'm going to quote it again. I'm going to put it in bold. Before the fall of man. To say that I'm intentionally evading your question because of some kind of fault in my worldview is an attack on my character that I just can't let stand. Can I ask you a question? We've spoken about God inflicting suffering on animals. As it gets a bit complicated because, like you say, the genre of the text is important. There could be room for things like hyperbole, whatever. But the example that I gave in my opening, I said it was a direct question and it hasn't been answered. And that's due to the sake of time, of course. But I want to give you the opportunity now. That deer, leg trapped under a branch on its own, no moral free choice, no moral soul development, no people looking at this with a chance to save them, giving them an ability to achieve some higher order good, just starvation for, say, I don't know, a week before finally being stumbled upon by a mountain lion who will kill it by sticking its jaws in its throat, and it will die excruciatingly over the course of a few minutes. This kind of thing happens routinely throughout the animal kingdom. I said that if I gave you the opportunity right now, if I said that you were about to become a random wild animal somewhere in the world right now, when I press this button, I think you would kill yourself before I had the opportunity because you know that you're about to enter a life of untold misery. The question is, why? Why is this allowed? And bear in mind that I don't know is not an answer.
Oh, yes, it is an answer. I don't know is called honesty, Alex. And if I don't know...
Well, there we have it then. I agree with you. I don't know is called honesty. Agnosticism on this question is called honesty. We don't know. You don't know. I don't know.
Unfair, messed up world. That deer is not born into the Garden of Eden. And because we are born into an unfair, messed up world, I've got a bigger concern than the deer. I've got the concern of my niece who died at the age of 7 in a horrible car wreck. I have a bigger concern, Alex. I have the concern of my nephew who was born with spina bifida. I have a bigger concern, Alex, and that's my younger sister who was born with brain damage and had to go through special ed. We are all born, the deer, the human being, all of us are born into a cursed, unfair world. Not because God created it that way, but because we human beings told God to take a hike, and Lucifer told God to take a hike. And when God steps back, chaos erupts. Now, the real question is there a solution? And the amazing message of the gospel of Jesus Christ is God loves us so much that he provides the ultimate solution, forgiveness and eternal life in heaven, where there will be no more suffering, no more death. Now, what's your solution to the very real problem of animal suffering, of human suffering? And you guys, if you're going to be honest, you know you have no solution other than despair. Because poor suckers get born at the wrong time in the wrong place. It's just fate, destiny, and chance. And why don't you try and be honest about how you have to work through the despair and the meaninglessness of life in light of the fact that there is no God?
Okay, so I think you've hang on. I just want to point out something. I think you've misunderstood the problem. The problem is one of internal inconsistency, right? Either you have to bite the bullet and say the suffering of innocence is okay, or you agree it's not okay, and then you have to explain how all this suffering is allowed. Now, to the question that Cliffe pointed out, and he said, well, humans told God to take a hike. Animals have been suffering for hundreds of millions of years before humans existed. The other point that you need to take account of is that evolution, mass catastrophes like the KT event that wiped out the dinosaurs, these are the engines of how we got here. So if you're going to blame it on Lucifer, if you're going to blame it on him, that makes him the author of our creation, because had these events not happened, had evolution not worked the way it did, we wouldn't be here. So these are the engines of our creation. This is why so many theists, they say we accept evolution. That's how God used, these are the means that God used to get to us. But these are incredibly violent means. So either you say Lucifer is responsible, but that means he's the author of our creation, or you have to say, well, no, it was Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, but that doesn't answer the question of hundreds of millions of years of animal suffering before.
None of this applies to animals.
Course in communication. I never said it was Lucifer's fault. I never said it was Adam and Eve's fault. I said there are consequences to created beings flipping God off and telling God to get lost. It's not the devil's fault. It's not Adam and Eve's fault. It is a consequence of created beings choosing to live their life separate from God. So I don't blame devil.
So which created beings are we talking about?
That is
which ones? Sorry, which ones are we talking
about?
What
I said.
Which ones are we talking about, Cliff? Sorry. Which created beings? If it's not Lucifer, it's not Adam and Eve, who are we talking about?
Well, obviously, there are also demons who rebelled against God, the demonic.
So it's their fault. Like Phil's question is specifically the suffering of non-human animals before Homo sapiens arrived on the scene. So say, 450,000 years ago, an animal suffering. Why? Who is it that rebelled that bring this about?
I do not know. What I do know is the consequence of free, autonomous individuals rebelling against God is chaos, unfairness, injustice fills the gap.
That comes later, because that's when humans come on the scene. But we're talking about whether we would expect to find, before humans even arrive on the scene, let alone afterwards, billions of years of suffering and death and destruction with no human beings, no Adam and Eve, no even like moral agents to do this kind of stuff. Like the only options available are that somehow these animals are responsible for rebelling against God in some way, or there's some kind of pre-human existing demons or Lucifer, in which case you would be blaming it on them, or the answer is you simply don't know, in which case sounds again like a bit of an appeal to agnosticism.
That's baloney. That's not an appeal to agnosticism. It's instead a simple, humble statement that I really don't know. And for anybody to argue that they've got all the answers to all the difficult questions is the height of human arrogance.
Now, well, precisely. Alex, hold on. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
You have still not faced the impossibility of agnosticism when it comes to meaning and purpose in life, the value of a human life, ethics, and life after death. And you intentionally evade it. And I don't blame you, Alex. I'd do the same thing if I was sitting in your chair. But you still are going to have to put your head on your pillow tonight, and you're going to have to acknowledge I'm a pretty highly motivated guy. I wouldn't have gotten the education at Oxford that I have. I wouldn't work as hard as I do at being rational and logical. You are living for something. You have confidence in someone, Alex. Now, come on. Just be honest with me and tell me where your confidence, your faith is.
But that does not answer. Hang on.
I have a few things to say.
Hang on, Alex. Hang on. That doesn't answer the question, right? We asked you who was responsible. Then you said demons, and the problem that I faced, the problem that I brought up is going to be exactly the same. That makes then demons the authors of our creation, because as I said, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the evolutionary process. Unless you want to deny evolution, I mean, feel free to do that if you wish, but then you're going to have more mountains of scientific evidence against you, right? So as long as you accept the scientific evidence, then these processes are how we got here. So whether you say it's Adam and Eve, whether you say it's the devil, whether you say it's demons, you're going to be faced with exactly the same problem, Cliff.
False. You have not listened carefully to me. What I have said is God created free, autonomous individuals to live in harmony, in love with him. When we rebel against him, there are consequences that we never imagined. Adam and Eve never imagined. Lucifer never imagined. I never imagined.
But before that,
I rebel against God.
Before that, animals were suffering.
There are amazing consequences that happen. And God created a good world. And when created beings rebelled against him, the consequences were horrific.
Do you know what redundancy is in design? Do you know what that phrase means?
No, I don't.
Okay, so redundancy means you plan for bad things happening. So one of my hobbies is skydiving. And if our main parachute doesn't work, guess what? We have a reserve parachute. I have a backup for my altimeter, an audible altimeter, in case that doesn't work.
Good. Right? I'm glad to hear that.
You build in redundancy into a system. My friend is a pilot. They have multiple backups in case things go wrong. Isn't it bad design for God to design a world that is so fragile that if a few creatures rebel, hundreds of millions, no, billions, probably trillions of animals are suffering? Isn't that bad design? Isn't that a lack of redundancy? No engineer would do that.
Also,
in order to love, we have to have a free will. If we have no free will, love is impossible. And when God creates us with a free will to love, he is obviously taking a limited risk. And the limited risk is that we will choose not to love, we will choose to hate and be apathetic. And there are horrible consequences to that. But the cross of Jesus Christ is a clear statement that God has provided the solution. God has provided the solution: forgiveness, reconciliation with him, with each other, and eternal life. And you guys are looking a gift horse in the face when you reject Christ. He's the best solution that there is to this horrible problem of animal suffering, human suffering, death of all of us. You're right. It's a real painful issue. Christ's death and resurrection is the most amazing solution to this problem. There's no better one.
And I love that you guys are taking animals so seriously. It's almost like you're appealing to this type of outrage again, but your desire to look at animals like they have souls. I mean, what is a soul? What is a self? Human beings have them. The reason why we were created in God's image, and that type of worldview spread throughout the entire world. And now all of a sudden, slaves, kids, women, people of other ethnicities, all of a sudden had worth. That came from the biblical God, no other God, definitely not atheism or anything of the sort. So I love that you guys are talking about animals and valuing them so much. But
I need to jump in here. I need to jump in here. Listen,
we don't know. Here in the U.S., just last point. Here in the U.S.,
really
37% of people say that they would save the life of their dog before a stranger. Okay, that is pretty scary. And yet it's appealing to now, okay, my animal has this incredible worth. Where is this worth coming from? If they're just chemicals, if they're just a form of different fur and bones, why do I care so much? You shouldn't care. From your
hang on, very quickly. I know Alex wants to jump in really quick. The idea that animals have moral worth goes back to Christianity. I'm sorry, have you not heard of Jainism? They have as a simple, one of the most basic principles: no violence to living beings. Have you heard of Motzi?
Yeah, we don't
have you heard of Motzi?
Either of them. No? Just like Augustine you brought up earlier.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you're not understanding the point. Hold on. I have to speak here. I have to speak. Otherwise, I don't want to just be a potted plant, as has been said.
Sorry about that. Look, okay, one.
Of course,
pardon my interruption.
I'm sorry. I
one moment, as I want to quickly mention, I was muted on Zoom, so Phil was not ignoring me. He just couldn't hear me. But I said just 60 seconds ago, without realizing I'm muted still, is I want to give Alex a chance to respond, and then Skyphil, and then Phil, and then we'll go into Q&A. So got about 2 minutes or so. Alex, the floor is all yours.
Look, man, this is getting kind of ludicrous. I mean, Phil just said a second ago, you said that the care about animals comes from Christianity. Phil said, have you heard of Jainism? You said, well, I don't believe in Jainism. Of course you don't believe in Jainism. What Phil is saying is not that Jainism is true. Phil is saying that Jainism already cared about animals outside of and before Christianity. That's what he's saying, undermining your claim that care for animals can only come from Christianity. Of course, you don't buy into Jainism, but it undermines the point that the care about animals can only come from Christianity because we have evidence of a world religion that believes in the care of that cares about animals without and outside of Christianity. Second point, you might not know what redundancy is in planning, but it seems like you know what redundancy is in argumentation. Every single time that Phil has brought up the point of non-human animal suffering before the fall of man, I'm going to underline that. I'm going to quote it again. I'm going to put it in bold. Before the fall of man. The answer has been, there are consequences to human creatures who rebel against God. Fine. But before that occurred, before any human being had even set foot on the planet, there were billions of years of animals suffering. This cannot be explained with reference to some mysterious consequence for some rebellious, mythical human beings who apparently existed in some garden, or perhaps are a mythological representation of the first proper Homo sapiens who ever walked the planet. Billions of years before they even set foot on the planet, there was already suffering. You cannot say that that suffering is a result of a consequence of human sin. That is what has been said every single time we've put this question up, but we still have not had an answer to why animals, again, underline, bold, before the original sin of human beings was suffering and dying in their brutal manners. Thirdly, earlier, and this was a while ago, Cliffe said to me that I was being intellectually dishonest. He said that I was acting intellectually dishonestly, or that he sort of didn't believe what I was saying, or something like that. I may be wrong. I may be incorrect. What I'm saying may be entirely stupid, but I cannot have it said that I'm not arguing honestly here. I'm telling you what I believe, and I'm telling you what I don't know. You said, and I will quote you as best I can. I will quote you as best I can. You said that claiming to have the answer to the biggest questions of the universe is the height of intellectual arrogance. You then told me that me saying I don't know the answer to the most fundamental, foundational question of human existence is an impossible option. And that when you didn't know an answer to a question, that was called basic humility. Well, I agree with you. I agree with you. You don't know. I don't know. There are many things that we do not know. It is not me who claims to have the ultimate answer to these questions. It is you and your worldview. I cannot have it said that agnosticism is not a response, or that I'm somehow evading the questions. Tell me that I'm wrong, fine. Tell me that I'm stupid, fine. Tell me that I'm not understanding your question. Maybe I'm answering the wrong question because I've misheard you. But to say that I'm intentionally evading your question because of some kind of fault in my worldview is an attack on my character that I just can't let stand, because I strive and pride myself on my ability to honestly engage with the questions that people are answering and honestly tell them that I don't know when I don't know. But I really, really want to hear an answer to this question of why non-human animals were suffering. One more time, I'll underline it, before any human being performed any kind of rebellious action that could have consequences on the planet.
I said so clearly.
I don't do this. I want to give you a chance to respond, Cliff, but that was my hope, was that rather than going into another question, we go into the Q&A. I can give you a really quick chance to respond, Cliff, since the question was nonetheless asked. I do want to see, Phil, if you had any last points you wanted to make. I think that you earlier wanted to say something. I'm not sure you got to.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, Mo-Tzu was a Chinese philosopher who lived around 400 BC, and he defended a concept of universal love. So this idea that the moral concern we have for others comes from Christianity, it is just false. It is wrong.
All right, so Stuart and I got to take a course in communication because we have miscommunicated. I'm sorry for that. Alex, my whole point has been there were created beings before Adam and Eve who rebelled against God. In the first couple of verses of Genesis, you realize there was chaos and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Something was wrong before the creation of Adam and Eve. All right? So it's not an issue of it all came apart because of Adam and Eve. I think it all came apart long before Adam and Eve, because created beings like Lucifer, like the demons, rebelled against God. Second point, Alex, I am not making a statement about your character. I am making a statement instead that it is impossible to be agnostic about the question of human value, human meaning, morality, and life after death, because you have to live life. Because you have to live life, you have no choice. But to answer the question, the person I'm talking to, do they have value or not? Do I have value or not? You can't evade that. You have to answer that. Because how you treat that person is based on whether you view them as being valuable or not valuable. You have no choice but to figure out what's the meaning of my life. Because you have to set an agenda, a schedule for today, tomorrow, next week. And those decisions that you make about your schedule show your priorities, show your ambition in life. Thirdly, you have no choice, Alex. This is not a question of me attacking your character. It's a simple statement, Alex. You have to live life. And the way you live your life ethically shows what you believe. I'm sorry, your actions are based on thought. They're based on a worldview. That's all I'm saying, Alex. And I'm sorry, Alex, it's not an attack on your character. You have to go to funerals. And you have to decide, is there life after death or not? You cannot just say, I'm agnostic, because the dead body is there. The question is, are you going to see that person or not? So that's all I meant, Alex. This is no attack on your character. Alex, I love you. I like you. You're a great guy. I love talking with you. But agnosticism is impossible when it comes to those fundamental four issues I've pointed out to you, because you have to live life. That's all I meant.
I like you too, for what it's worth. And the only quarrel I had in terms of a character attack was saying that I was intentionally evading the question. I don't believe that that's what I was doing. Maybe I was unintentionally evading the question. Maybe I didn't understand what you were asking me. But to say that I was intentionally evading a question runs counter to the very essence of my, for want of a better word, ministry online.
I apologize for that, Alex. The reason I was so put off by you is because we've had a lot of thoughtful conversation. And when you so glibly dismissed my question of you, I'm beginning to wonder, what on earth is he doing here? Because you're a very thoughtful guy. You're a brilliant guy. No question about it, in my mind. But when I asked you that hard question and you just glibly answered it in a few sentences and then moved on, I'm thinking, good gracious, what's going on here?
And you said earlier that you didn't know yourself psychologically. And I'm not saying that in a cheeky kind of way, but I think a lot of the psychological leanings connected to the experience, like Cliff keeps talking about, is really important here.